Chapter 9 Lost Flowers. Snow White and Circe sat in Mrs. Tittlebottom's front parlor, feeling stunned and confused. The flowers had brought Hazel and Primrose back to life, just as Gothel had hoped. Her poor sisters had finally woken up and ventured off to the dead woods. Alone. "We have to go there now. They'll be devastated when they see what's happened to the dead woods," said Snow White, and Circe knew Snow was right. "Well, my dears," Mrs. Tittlebottom said, "I will pack you a nice basket if you think you ought to go. The dead woods aren't too far from here, and I bet that's where they were headed, back to their home." Mrs. Tittlebottom went straight to the kitchen and started making them sandwiches for the journey. "Why in the many kingdoms did she let them leave?" Circe asked, throwing up her hands. She tried not to be frustrated with the old woman, but she couldn't help it. Snow White frowned at her cousin. "Don't blame her, Circe. She thought she was doing the right thing. They wanted to go home. But they have no home to go to. Everything there is ruined. Their sister is dead. They know nothing of the events that's happened after their deaths. They're lost and alone, and who knows what kind of powers Primrose has. She has Mania's blood, and they were empowered by all those flowers in the field. And Mrs. Tittlebottom isn't safe here with all these flowers. You read what Rapunzel's kingdom is capable of doing to possess the flowers' magic." "Circe, calm down. Everything will be fine. Let's pack up Gothel's old library and then go straight to the Deadwoods. I bet we will get there before Primrose and Hazel do, since they left on foot." "Okay, that's a good plan," Circe agreed. "Will you ask Mrs. Tittlebottom if she has some crates so we can pack up the books?" Snow White smiled. "Of course." And she went off to the kitchen, leaving Circe alone with her thoughts. "Circe, hello? Are you there?" It was Nanny. Circe took her hand mirror out of her pocket. "Circe, you have to come to the Fairylands as soon as possible. Your mother's escaped from the dreamscape, and we are afraid you and Snow are in danger." "How did they escape?" Circe asked, but she thought she knew. Circe wiped the mirror without another word, making Nanny's face disappear. "Show me Flans," Circe called out, and then she saw her. The cat lay motionless on the floor of the solarium, right where her mother's body had been laid since they had used their magic to destroy Ursula. "Oh, Flans!" Snow ran back into the room, her big eyes wide with worry. "Circe, what's wrong? Is Flans here?" She was looking around the room for the majestic creature. "No, look!" Circe showed Snow the image of the lightless, beautiful cat in the mirror. Snow White gasped in horror. "Flans!" Tulip appeared in the mirror, dropping to her knees beside Flans. "Oh my goodness, what's happened to you?" Snow and Circe watched her weep over the poor cat. Snow White touched the mirror, frantically calling out to the princess. "Tulip, is she okay? Is she alive? What happened?" "The mirror doesn't work that way, Snow. Tulip can't hear us." Circe wiped the mirror again and summoned Nanny. "Show me Nanny." Nanny's face appeared instantly. "Circe, what happened?" "I checked in on Flans. It looks like something's happened to her. Tulip was with Flans now, but I have no way to speak with her." "I'll send word to Oberon. I thought Flans had something to do with this. I think it was she who released your mothers from the dreamscape." "I think so too. That's why I summoned her. Nanny, if Flans used her powers to release my mothers, she may not have survived the ordeal." "I know, my dear. I know. Let me send word to Oberon now so he can check on Flans. In the meantime, I want you to take Snow back to her own kingdom, and for you to come directly here to the Fairylands. I want to, Nanny, but I can't. We have to go to the Deadwoods. The Rapunzel flower has grown in Mrs. Tittlebottom's field. Primrose and Hazel have woken up, and they're headed there now. We don't have time for you to be flying off to the Deadwoods, Circe. Not with your mother's loose. You can't help every single person in need. You'll destroy yourself in the process if you try. But, Nanny, we have to. My mothers are responsible for the destruction of Hazel and Primrose's home and the death of their sister. They've been dead for hundreds of years. I can't just let them stumble upon the ruins of their lives. I can't let them suffer that alone." "Very well, my dear. But please stay safe. Your mothers are going to start searching for you. You have to be quick in the Deadwoods, my dear. Very quick. Enchant those girls, pack them up, and bring them directly here to the Fairylands if you have to. I want you here with me. I can't lose another daughter. I just can't. Cersei's heart broke for Nanny. I'll be careful, Nanny. I promise. I love you, my girl. Now go, and get here as quickly as you can. I love you too, Nanny. And Cersei ran her hand across the mirror, making Nanny disappear. She slipped the mirror back into the pocket of her skirt. Oh, Snow, if Floods release my mothers, I'm afraid we're both in danger. I know how to handle them, but I'm worried about you. Snow clenched her jaw, determined. You're not packing me off to my mother. Listen, Cersei, I know you and Nanny are worried about me, but I am older than you, and as much as I appreciate the love and care you have given me, I need you to understand that I am a grown woman, and I can make my own decisions. I am going with you to the Deadwoods. I know I'm not a witch, but I have a feeling more answers are there. I believe you. I feel the same way, Cersei said quietly. Snow wondered if this was the right moment to tell Cersei about her suspicions. Those missing pages she was looking for, what if they were in the Dead Woods? Perhaps they were with the books Jacob had hidden away from Gothel after her sisters died. Snow didn't know, but she felt as if everything that was happening was leading them to the Dead Woods. Cersei took something out of her pocket. It was a locket of sorts, a tiny silver flask connected to a chain so it could be worn like a necklace. Snow, I want you to wear this. Snow took it into her hand and looked at Cersei questioningly. Cersei could see that she wanted to ask what was inside, but decided against it. The look in her eyes was clear. Snow trusted her cousin. She didn't need to know what was in the flask. She loved her and wanted nothing more than to go on this adventure with her. I'm happy you trust me, Snow, and I hope I'm making the right choice bringing you with me. But promise me you will do whatever I say. Snow White smiled at Cersei, taking her by the hand and squeezing it tightly. I promise, because I do trust you. As they hugged, Mrs. Tittlebottom came into the room. The large hamper in her arms was overflowing with more food than they could possibly need. Well, my darlings, please be careful on your journey. Old Mrs. Tittlebottom isn't a witch. She doesn't pretend to know things the way witches do, but she can't smell a fairy tale when it's happening. I'll tell you what I told Primrose and Hazel. My story is at an end, but I feel it's just beginning for you two beauties. Don't let yourselves get caught up in someone else's story. Stick to your own tale, my darlings. Write your own ending if you need to. Cersei gave Mrs. Tittlebottom a queer look as Snow kissed the old woman on the cheek. Mrs. Tittlebottom, there was a mirror in the cellar I asked Snow to bring up for you. If there is anything at all that you need, just call my name and I will appear in the reflection. It's quicker than sending me a message by owl or raven. Mrs. Tittlebottom smiled at Cersei and Snow. I don't think I will need it, but I have a feeling you will feel better knowing I will use it if I need to. And you've done so much for me, sweet Cersei. This is the least I can do for you. Now go. Let old Mrs. Tittlebottom rest. Snow White and Cersei packed everything into the odd sister's house, the hamper of food, the crates of books from Gothel's library, and various trunks. Primrose and Hazel had left everything behind, even their fortune. Cersei left Mrs. Tittlebottom a small chest of coins in her bedroom, enough to keep the woman happy and well fed for many years to come. She didn't think Primrose and Hazel would mind. The woman had cared for them all those years they were dead. After all, it was the least they could do. After everything was packed and settled, Snow and Cersei stood on the front stoop of the odd sister's house and waved at Mrs. Tittlebottom, who was standing in the garden. She looked impossibly old to Cersei, older even than Nanny. Goodbye, sweet Mrs. Tittlebottom. Thank you for everything. She looked at her, standing in the sea of magic Rapunzel flowers, and wondered if Mrs. Tittlebottom would ever use them on herself. Wondered if she would choose to live another life. Somehow, she doubted it. Goodbye, my darlings. Remember what I said. Write your own fairy tale, my dears, and take a page out of Mrs. Tittlebottom's book. Stay clear of cellars and bloody chambers. Circe and Snow smiled, not knowing quite what to say. They waved goodbye as they went into the house, ready to embark on their own story.